idea, a new world order.
Your world is not what it seems. Alex Ansary, Outside the Box.
If you listen closely to the wind, you can still hear the echoes of the Obama screams coming from the block's end. Good evening, I'm Alex Ansary. It's November 6, 2008, 2 days after Election Day. Barack Obama has been elected to be the President of the United States of America. We'll be taking your phone calls tonight at 503-288-4442. I'm going to go over some interesting pieces of information and some other news that you may not be aware of. While the debates were going on, the elections were being played out, the staged elections, mind you. Because this is also a time where a lot of people will see no more need to protest or talk about CIA torture or the media monopoly, this issue or that issue. After all, the political messiah is here. He has now arrived, and everything's just going to be A-OK. Without getting way deep into all of those things of a political nature, because the show is not about politics, it's about actually surviving the future that's actually here now, spiritually, physically, psychologically, emotionally. It's not getting caught up in the political theater sideshow that they want you to focus on. But that's the perception some people have of this show. No matter what happens in this election, what has happened, the same agenda will continue to go on and, in fact, has more power than ever before. If you take a look at the banks and the whole situation there, we've seen the merger of the banks, centralizing of decision-making, who gets what amount of money. You're looking at the IMF being bailed out by China right now, or they're calling for China to bail them out. The IMF is looking for billions of dollars to loan all these countries more money. It's just going to put them into a deeper state of debt. Who actually has a plan to create wealth in this nation at this time? Right now, what's actually happened is they basically over time have bought up your TV stations, bought up your radio stations, bought up your papers. They told you who the enemy was, and they told you that this was the president that mismanaged the military and put you into a perpetual state of debt without looking into all the people that were accomplices to the Bush administration. Now that we have Barack Obama, a lot of people feel that sense of hope that things have changed now. After all, we have the lesser of two evils, and it's a black president, so we're making some major strides here in the United States when it comes to racism. So that becomes the issue. What you need to know about this future when it comes to disseminating information, making up your own mind based on the available data, is that we have to remember our story and not get caught up in their story, what they want us to focus on, and remember what we want, and that's to end this war. And when we talk about the war, we're also talking about the war in the American people, on our farms, on our children, the police state that's been built up over time, all these issues that were already pre-existing long before 9/11, the militarization of local police, all these different things people have gotten used to accepting their own enslavement because it's comfortable, these attitudes that are embedded in our collective psyche. We just have to go along to get along. This is all we have to choose from, the lesser of two evils. Are you for McCain? Is a question most people ask when you talk about the military connections to Obama and how he's not actually necessarily the lesser of two evils. Only time will tell on that. We will see, won't we? But the question is, how do we get to this point where people can't have a normal conversation with their neighbor, with someone at the coffee shop, and it not get intense? It not end up with someone very angry at the other person. What we're talking about on this show each week is getting out of that angry mindset and taking a look at these things in our society from a different perspective, a non-political perspective, a more spiritual one, asking ourselves, how did we get in this mess? What kind of circumstance are we caught in? What does it mean to be a human being alive in the year 2008, moving into the year 2009? How do we evolve out of this experience? How do we create change on the local level? How do we be the change that we want to see in the world? Well, first and foremost, we have to begin to believe in ourselves. And what I've seen in the past 48 hours is a whole lot of people run in one direction, the direction they're supposed to run in, and that's Barack Obama's arms. He's been promoted to be the savior by the same mainstream media that told you that Al-Qaeda was the enemy, that these are the countries that we have to bomb. This is why we have a police state. This is why there are cameras here. This is why we're justifying police brutality and the liberal use of tasers in our world today. But go ahead and watch the puppet on the strings. As long as he makes you feel good inside on an emotional level, I guess that's all that matters for some people. But for you and me, other people out there in the alternative media that are saying something different, we have to figure out really how to pick ourselves up by our bootstraps and move forward in the future with this new strange reality that we now find ourselves in on a day-to-day basis. How do we move forward without fear, unleashing this internal power that we have inside our bodies, without being obsessed with the past, keeping our eyes, hypnotized on the rear view mirror? There's nowhere to go but forward. The future is now, and it's a little different of a future than what you're seeing on CNN or Fox News, the future they're crafting for you. Because it doesn't matter that Barack Obama's in. There's still the Patriot Act. There could be a third Patriot Act. We're still in danger of another false flag attack. And if we are attacked by another so-called Al-Qaeda cell, you need to look at all the information and question things first in light of all the information that we have about September 11, 2001, the London bombings on July 7, 2005 in London, England. Strange coincidences. 911 days between the attacks on 9/11 in New York City and the bombing in Madrid, Spain. All these different things that we've forgotten about over time. And then you begin to talk to someone about 9/11 and they move their seat away as they stare at you with defiance, like you're some sort of a potential enemy, and look in the eye and say, I know what I believe about that day. And they look at you like you might be some sort of a dangerous person. People don't know what to be afraid of. People don't know what kind of change to create in the world. People don't even know what the real problem is. A lot of people are swimming in the seas of Wonderland right now, falling deeper and deeper into the abyss of total psychological, spiritual delusion. There are some of us that are here to try to awaken other people. And what does it mean to actually be awake? That's a question that's different for each person. Being awake, being conscious, being aware, that's a relative thing. We have to enter into a new reality where there's a greater level of mutual respect, where we understand we are on different paths on this planet. And many of us in the activist world, the truth-seeking world, whatever label you want to call it, whatever verbiage you choose to use, we're all where we need to be at the time. And there is this odd perfection to all this stuff because we are going to learn a very big lesson from the things we experience in the future. We're already learning lessons on the microcosmic level in our own lives as a result of the challenges that we face. So you cannot give up hope, no matter how many times they rip you off, no matter how many times they rape the country, no matter how hungry we get. There's going to be a lot more economic hardship and a lot more people coming to Portland, Oregon to sleep on our streets and use up our resources. What we have to remember is there's a lot of people that are going through the pain, the economic pain, just like you, that are asking themselves these same questions about the world, about their government, about this universe, just like you. So to become depressed, saddened, dismayed by what's happening today is not the path you want to be on. When I look at articles like the one I saw last week, suicide rates in Portland double in the last year, it's a sign of the times. If you want to survive psychologically and want to live, become more human in this mechanized, increasingly mechanized, machine-like world, you've got to look within. The TV does not have the answers for you. I am on TV now, at this time, maybe not in the future. For those that don't have the TV, we make the show available on the website. But even the internet itself does not have all the answers for you. They're just tools. They're just vehicles to take you to different places of information while they tell you everything's okay on the mainstream TV and you don't need to look anywhere else for your information, opinions that you formulate in your own head. We have it all prepackaged for you. Here's the talking points. Here's the issue. Here's what you talk about later at the bar and argue about. McCain versus Obama, Coke versus Pepsi, when I'm sitting over here dreaming of all the water that I can drink. On my own island where there's peace, where we can grow food, where we're connected, where we're not warring with one another. But for there to be peace in the nations, there has to be peace in the states. For there to be peace in the states, there has to be peace in the counties and the cities. To have peace on that level, there has to be peace in our neighborhoods and our homes. For that to happen, there has to be peace within our families. For that to happen, there has to be some sort of an internal peace. And that's the answer in a world that's becoming increasingly chaotic. Okay, now let's talk about the news, and in a couple minutes, let's take some of your phone calls. In terms of the banks, just 3 super banks now dominate industry. Several of the nation's biggest banks have failed or have been absorbed by healthier institutions, leaving 3 giant super banks with an unprecedented concentration of market power. Bank of America, JP Morgan and Chase, and Wells Fargo. No surprise there. While that may be good news for emerging giants and the failing companies they help rescue, the new monopoly raises troubling questions about regulation and competition. Bank fees are going up, up, up and away, and that's the danger to consumers as more of these banks consolidate. And as I said before, make the decision as to who gets the money at what rate, whether it be the individual, corporation, business, or nation for that matter when you're talking about the IMF. Now, in terms of the election, I gotta say, I watched McCain's exit speech. He looked a little bit happy, a little bit relieved to be able to move on with his life and perhaps take a nap. McCain promises to help Obama. The 72-year-old Arizona senator urged all Americans, including his supporters, to rally behind Obama, saying he planned to help the new president-elect tackle the large number of issues that the country is currently facing at this time. It was almost as if he waved and said, you know, it looks like my job here is done. You guys have fun with all that. See ya, as he jumped ship. Bush has now called on Obama and has congratulated him on his win. U.S. President George W. Bush on Tuesday called Democrat Barack Obama to congratulate him on winning the election, the White House said, adding that Bush invited him and his family to visit the White House soon. Bush said to Obama, "You are about to go on one of the greatest journeys of life. Congratulations and go enjoy yourself." Bush said he had directed Obama to the White House so they can talk about their unprecedented cooperation between the White House and Obama before the president-elect is inaugurated on January 20th. In the coming weeks, we will ask administration officials to brief the Obama team on ongoing policy issues ranging from the financial markets to the war in Iraq, Bush said at the White House. The outgoing two-term president may also warn that terrorists may try to use the handover of power to strike at the United States, saying that we are in a struggle against violent extremists determined to attack us, and they would like nothing more than to exploit this period of change to harm the American people. Obama sent a statement that he looked forward to meeting Bush, saying, "I thank him for reaching out in the spirit of bipartisanship that will be required to meet the many challenges we face as a nation." Now, the Pentagon is ready to brief the incoming administration immediately, stressing the importance of a smooth wartime transition. The Pentagon Task Force is identified and is highlighting the most important events, milestones, and actions that the new administration will face in the first 90 days. Now, world leaders are spelling out demands to Obama. World leaders have already drawn up demands to put U.S. President-elect Barack Obama, and quickly expressed a desire to see his promise of change applied to key conflicts and dragging the global economy out of crisis. Ron Paul has warned of a cataclysmic shift toward a new world order under Barack Obama, speaking on the stage management of the election and calling it a huge distraction from real issues. The congressman outlined how both candidates were pre-positioned by the elite interests with the knowledge that either would satisfactorily serve their agenda. The congressman also warned that many Republican representatives may go along with Obama just to win favor with the electorate and be seen to follow popular opinion. kind of like you with your peers, hey, I'm for Obama. I'm not going to, rock the boat too much. I'll just, keep myself and my opinions quiet and go along to get along. After all, nobody wants a spoiler. Commenting on the much touted international crisis that luminaries such as Colin Powell, Joe Biden, and Zbigniew Brzezinski have all guaranteed will occur within weeks of Obama entering the White House, Congressman Ron Paul stated that he believes it may be a catalyst for a shift towards world government. Here's a quote. I think it's going to be an announcement of a new monetary order, and they'll probably make it sound very limited. They're not going to say this is world government, even though it is if you control the world's money and you can control the military, which they do indirectly. By controlling the economy, you control the militaries, the funding, the weapons, the sales, all that and much, much more. Paul also suggested that any escalation could be facilitated by false flag events such as a Gulf of Tonkin-style incident. I'm going to briefly go over the possible candidates for the Treasury under the Obama administration. It's really the old guard of the corporate elite. A couple different names here I'm going to throw by you. Paul A. Volcker, Robert E. Rubin, Lawrence E. Summers. Each member is a member of the group. Each person is a member of the group of 30. Each one of these possible new Treasury secretaries. Many of them are members of the Council on Foreign Relations. We could see that Paul A. Volcker is the former Federal Reserve chief. He was a key figure in the decision to suspend gold, as the dollar being backed by gold in 1971, which resulted in the collapse of the Bretton Woods system. We also have one of these individuals that has been to the Bilderberg Group, and that would be, I'm trying to get his name here, Geffner. And he was Bill Clinton's Treasury Secretary, so it's all good in the family. A lot of the same characters are still going to stick around the Obama administration. Investors running out of places to hide, although there was bleak U.S. economic data on Wednesday to trigger a rush into government-issued bonds. The safe havens lost some of their appeal after the Treasury said it would sell $55 billion in new securities to finance global spending. In another headline from today, world stocks plunge on rising recession fears. The Dow plunged by 5%, down 443 points. European stock markets traded sharply lower today, following overnight losses in Asia as investors fretted about the global economy ahead of expected interest rate reductions later from the European Central Bank and the Bank of England. The EU is calling for a new deal for a new world with Obama. European Commissioner President Jose Manuel Barroso called on a victorious Barack Obama to work with the EU to shape a new deal for the new world. In terms of oil, like I said, it's going to go up after the elections. Oil to shoot back through $100 per barrel. The World Energy Watchdog is certain the era of cheap oil is over. According to new research that's due out next week, in terms of the IMF, world economy is to decline in the year 2009. So what you're not hearing about in the debates from either side is the number of Afghan civilians that have been murdered in Afghanistan, and we're talking mostly women and children, and we here in America are detached from this to a certain level. Most people are apathetic to the number of deaths taking place on a regular basis there. Here's a new one. U.S. accused of killing children in bombing of Afghan wedding. Afghan villagers have accused coalition troops of bombing a wedding party and killing 40 people, mostly children. The bombing destroyed a housing complex where women and children had gathered to celebrate. According to villagers, body parts littered the wreckage, and nearby farm animals lay dead. Hamid Karzai, the Afghan president, yesterday called on the U.S. to stop the killing of civilians. Meanwhile, and this is stuff that a lot of people really don't care about because, how does this affect a lot of people in Portland? It doesn't. They're shielded from it. They see an election. They see a candidate. He says, let's have a troop surge of 15,000 in Afghanistan. He says, you know what? Let's not keep the NSA accountable. Let's allow the wiretaps to continue. Let's go after guns. Let's do all these things. Let's have a world tax to disarm the American people. Let's do all these things, but let's say change enough times, and let's smile enough times, and that's all you have to do. Convince people that they really have no other choice. And people are looking for this other choice. What is the other choice? It's not going to come from Washington. If we have riots in the street, martial law declared, do you think you're going to be able to find some accountability in Washington? There's a lot of key players in Washington, people working within the shadow government that have already been a part of drills earlier last year, this year, where they take them out of Washington to an underground bunker in Colorado. You know, there's 2 more brigades that are going to be assigned to Police America under Northcom if there's a big disaster. And it's in the state of Georgia where that 1st Brigade has been dispatched to as one of their headquarters, along with Texas and Colorado. And it's also there where there's about 500,000 to 1 million empty coffins that are just sitting there. We haven't gone into that yet on this show. So there's a lot of things taking place that you're not hearing about in the debates. Your responsibility is to take care of yourself, to explore the boundaries of your mind. What does it mean to be a human? When you see the world becoming more mechanized, people becoming more like rats in a sinking ship, acting like we're rats in a cage, not making eye contact, not embracing the love that we should, just the fear, the anxiety, the apprehension, the anger, the jealousy, the resentment. It's all there. And, you know, speaking as someone that, you know, has an interesting job where there is an abundance of challenges when it comes to equality and things of that nature. Things get rougher in the workplace. There's more tension between the employer and the employee as they have more pressure directed towards them from their bosses to meet the budget, to have a certain amount of sales. It all goes downhill. So a lot of us are dealing with that, dealing with the anger that others have towards us, their resentment, their increased desire to control because they feel a lack of control in their own lives, and they're confused as well. And they're just going along to get along, trying to make those numbers come up. So the guys up in the office, CEO headquarters, are happy and satisfied with where the business is going, with no care whatsoever about the economic problems, just how they're affected personally. How do we get to a point in our world where it's not about the self, where there's a real inner peace that comes from helping others, no matter how much money you make or don't make? It's not about that. And people ask me, you know, what do you make from doing this show? Or why do you do this show even though you don't make any money? Because I don't. And it's a financial struggle because it's not about that. Life's not about money. And for most people, it's a psychological need. And a lot of people now, especially young women, you know, they make their decisions when it comes to dating and whatnot and being with a mate based on their economic standing. But it's not so much about just that. It's a lot of things in the world, you know, where people start looking at their lives a little differently and things being more about the almighty dollar bill in terms of their relationships with other people and also how they view themselves and their own, you know, sense of self-value. It's all measured against the matrix. We have to learn to differentiate between their story and our story, the lives that we're supposed to be living, the relationships that we're supposed to be having right now with our fellow brothers and sisters, not warring with one another. And that's where all this stuff is leading towards. Riots in the streets, mostly because we won't be able to afford the food at the price that we've been paying for it, and we're going to have a lot more food being exported out of the country. You know, credit's drying up. The FDIC has never really been tested. They're leaning on the Treasury. Treasury's broke. We're all dependent on China. It's a very dangerous time to be alive. My message is, get clear in your own mind. Try to take out the old belief systems that just have to go. All these different things that confuse you and lead you astray. Even things that you view about yourself and your idea of what's possible, what you can do. A lot of this stuff is programmed into us. You know, even to go even deeper, relationships, for example. First of all, the biggest sexual organ in the body it's in the brain. And we learn through, you know, this multimedia world to be attracted to certain things. I want to look a certain way, you know, to have a special friend or to have a group of peers around you, to have an extended family, you know, just how you dress, just how you talk, you know, all this stuff coming from the mind and not really connecting with other people at the heart level. Even Willamette Week was talking about all the different couples that are breaking up at this time because of the economic crisis that's going on. People fighting over money. How is that a relationship between two people? I don't understand that. If there's a real relationship between two people, nothing's going to get in the way of your connection. Not the money, not the stuff going on in the world, none of that. And it's sad to see that happen and people not actually have discussions about this. So I believe that we're affected by the chaos happening in the rest of the world that's being engineered by the elite. I believe there are souls crying out to us from the grave, and we're affected by it on a deep, profound level physically, because we are all one. You take out a certain region of the planet and you bomb the heck out of it over time, you know, and the troops come back and they're upset by what they've seen. And I have a couple friends that were in Iraq, and one individual had two people killed on the left side and right side when he was in a Humvee and it was going down a road in Iraq and a roadside bomb exploded. And, you know, he's taking antidepressants to deal with this. He tries to talk to counselors. He tries to talk to different people about how he feels about the government, what's going on, people not being awake to the martial law plans, very upset about the economy melting down, and they just want to put him on more drugs. And then you read about other stories about people coming back and waking up in the middle of the night with their arms around their girlfriend. You know, one guy that called my show was, you know, confessing this to me, that something he feels had happened to him there that caused something in his mind to switch. And as I said before, in native cultures, when they came back from war, they had a cleansing process, a ritual to get the war demons out of their system. Here they bring them back to police you in highly uncertain economic times. All this was planned out in advance. And right now they want you angry. They want you rioting. They want you getting guns to a certain degree and trying to attack the government in a way. That way they can provide the clampdown. They can provide the excuse, the pretext. And if they don't get it from the American people, they'll provocateur it. They'll stage it. And they'll say, this is the enemy, and these are the people that we have to go after. After all, it's these things they've been saying on the web, these TV shows, these radio shows. We have to go after them. And you might hear stories about drop teams in American cities, removing key people. We've already seen attacks on journalists in this country, and it's funny, but kind of sad. It would be funny if it wasn't so tragic. You see people on the mainstream television networks having stories about reporters being abused, beat up, slapped around, handcuffed, choked by the police, cameramen that work for CBS, that work for NBC. And this is a strange thing for them to go through, you know, because they have pretty much, many of them, gone along with the police state, always spoke in favor of the police department, saying, well, the police department says this, they resisted, and they questioned authority, so they had no choice but to tase the poor girl because she didn't put her hands behind her back fast enough, or they had to do this and tase him 3-4 times because he just wouldn't put his hands behind his back. He was too busy flipping around like a frog, like a fish out of water. That's, you just sit there and tase them over and over. Like, what do you expect? But they justified it for so long, and people just get used to it. They see cops, and they see world's wildest chases, and they just get kind of used to this being a part of our environment. So just accept it and vote for the lesser of two evils. Yeah! Might as well pour another beer and celebrate that one as you try to forget what's actually taking place in the country. So you look at these TV reporters, and there'll be a story in New Jersey, like there was a couple weeks ago, where there were some people protesting, and it wasn't about the war. They were bringing attention to all the different African Americans that were being killed in this area in Newark, New Jersey. They were protesting against the amazing escalated level of street violence. And they were outside a church asking them to do more for the community, a black church, to stand up and be more civically responsible. So they were demonstrating in front of the church, and there was a police officer that was hired by the church. And you ought to take a look at this on YouTube. If I had the video, I would show it to you. He turns and looks at the CBS 2 photographer, and he's like, put the camera down now. The guy doesn't put down the camera, and he basically grabs him, throws him to the ground, handcuffs him, and then puts him in a classic thug street style headlock choke. And there are tons of pictures of this. And so they're sitting there kind of like, with the color removed from their face on TV, reporting that, basically they just got, their ass kicked. And they're the news, and this is not supposed to happen. This is supposed to be a free state. And the mayor comes on and says, we will hold anyone accountable if we find that there was wrongdoing. If you find that there was wrongdoing, we have the videotape right there. The guy's in handcuffs. The police officer is choking him. So what I'm saying is the consensus reality for a lot of people is the police state's here. Just kind of keep your head down low and pretend it's not actually happening. Vote for the lesser of two evils. Hope it doesn't happen to you. In the meantime, nobody knows, first, how to stop it, but most of all, second, B, where it came from, why it's here. why there's so much anger, why there's so much police brutality. That isn't necessarily being authorized by the federal government. It's just happening because there are police officers that think they can do this, that they have the power to do this. You have a lot of people that used to be bullies when they were young, and now they have this opportunity to slap people around. There's a lot of young people that don't have a purpose in life, so they play video games their whole life, and they're in a World War III situation. They're a Marine. They're out there taking out the enemy. Well, they have a place planned for them in the future as well, especially if they want to initiate a draft, especially if they have a whole technological machine-like matrix system, or you have automated robots out there killing innocent women and children in Afghanistan, in other countries that we may go to war with, or even here at home, controlling civilian populations through spraying certain chemicals to quell the riot, to calm people down. We're already in a prison to a certain degree. If you can see it, fine. If you can't, there's not a whole lot I can say to you at this point that's going to prove that to you. Do you like being scanned? Do you like your license plates being scanned, being put in these central databases here in Portland where they track where you go? Do you like the National ID card? Do you like the concept of an implantable microchip? Or how about going through the militarized police state at the airports today? Is this enjoyable? You don't defeat the New World Order by voting for lesser of two evils. You defeat the New World Order, first of all, by remembering what the Bill of Rights and U.S. Constitution is. What does it mean to be a human? Questioning reality, first of all, because they're constantly changing history and laying out the blueprint of what life's all about. And as, like, our jobs become more machine-like, there's less incentive for a lot of people to bring out that humanity within them. This is how I feel at my job. And when that happens, people shut down emotionally. And they look like actual zombies with the color drained out of their face, no feeling whatsoever, and never even actually asking themselves, why is this economic crash happening? Or why am I going through what I'm going through right now? Why are there others going through the same thing? Is there a different way that perhaps I can look at the situation that I'm in right now, as opposed to getting drunk tonight, as opposed to eating a whole bunch of food, as opposed to just watching the TV set and having them lay out for me what the problem is and who's going to save me from this crisis that they manufactured? To move on with the rest of the news, we have to become more empathetic to what is happening around the world and the global social injustices taking place. Millions of Afghans face starvation, the combination of a summer drought, poor irrigation, and rising global food prices. A famine is unveiling in Afghanistan, with about a third of Afghanistans, or about 8.4 million Afghans, suffering from starvation. Some are eating grass, and a tiny number have died from starvation already. And you take a look at what's happening in Afghanistan and the suffering that these people are going through. Unless the average American or Portlander goes through that themselves, it's hard to emphasize or sympathize, for that matter, if you've never been there, if you view them as the enemy, if you say, well, we have to be there and some of these strikes have to happen for Al-Qaeda to get caught. Well, if you're actually looking for the perpetrators of September 11th, you have to go back and look at the 9/11 Commission report and all the stuff that they omitted from that report pertaining to Building 7. And 9/11 is something that took place 7 years ago, and what we're doing here is trying to keep you current, keep you up to date, keep myself current, for that matter, and the things I talk about with things going on today. But unless we deal with what happened on September 11, 2001, how it was a staged coup against the American people, they launched us into a war, told us who the enemy is. I mean, you're talking about the ultimate in mind control and putting fear out there on such a large scale so they can control people's thoughts and feelings, and thus what they say and their actions. That's what's happening here in this last election. Is a whole bunch of people that have been engineered, pushed in one person's direction, while another guy throws the fight, says, hey, you know what, Barack, I'm glad, to see you made it this far. I'm sad your grandmother couldn't be here to see this with you. I look forward to working with you in the future. And you're going to get a call from my friend Bush here in the future. We're all going to work together and be a great, big, happy family. You and my corporate pimps as well. We're all going to make a whole lot of money, because in reality, they are lieutenants to the New World Order. And the elite already made the decision a long time ago as to who the winner would be. So you can't be looking in Washington for answers. You have to be looking at the local level, and I don't particularly mean the city itself. Much of that's been co-opted. But if you feel a draw to that, If you're active in that area, you should stay active in that area. But for some of us, this is kind of like a journey of the soul. This interesting world that we live in. It's not necessarily about the destination, but it's the journey. It's all this information that we have about the world and making decisions as to how we want to live our lives. Do we want to become more hateful? Do we want to become more vengeful? Do we want to become more angry and violent? Do we want to become what they want us to become? The answer is no. Well, what do you want? I know I want a more peaceful world. I know that I want to teach people that when the crisis happens, you don't have to fight one another in the streets with brass knuckles and baseball bats and knives. There are ways around that. If you can develop some sort of a mutual respect and establish a rapport, maybe a little eye contact. For now, you got to take your eyes away from your cell phone. You got to take your eyes away from MySpace. You got to take your eyes away from your email and realize that technology has surpassed our humanity in a big, big way. It's not always necessarily the concept of time speeding up, but human progress and what's going on with human activity being out of sync with nature. And that's what it comes down to. We're out of sync with the natural order of things, with how the trees are feeling, the intelligence and information that we should be getting from the universe, from plants, from things of that nature. Things that are far above my head, sitting here in this urban grid right now, trying to convey some sort of an idea whose time has come. We have to get back to something more grounding. We have to get real with ourselves. We have to develop the ability to look at ourselves in the mirror and believe that we can activate this light inside of us. No matter what happens in the world, we have choices to make. And we are not innocent bystanders. It is not the end of the world if martial law is declared tomorrow, if World War III comes tomorrow, if there's massive starvation tomorrow. It means there's going to be great challenges. And they are a lot of great challenges coming our way. If you want to cry about that and call it negative because it goes contrary to your belief system, that's your business. The reality is our world is changing. We're being pushed into large cities. They're taking over the farms. A lot of farms are going to go bankrupt this year. They're pushing more GMO on us as our country gets poor, and there's less organic options to go around. Where's the health care? What's going to happen to our kids? Look at all this violence and sexual perversion on the television set, and you know it's there. The stuff that's not quite right, the stuff that's really inappropriate, but what are you going to do? All you can do is shut it off, but the question is, are you? Or are you someone that just kind of lets the subliminal advertising and mind control have its way with you? I remember being in detention, age 11, North Marion Middle School, Aurora, Oregon, wanting to create my own superhero, thinking about this crazy world that I was living in then, and what attributes that hero would have. So I just took a big dictionary about this big and just kind of flipped it open, ran my fingers down the page, and I came up with this word. And I researched what the word meant, and it stuck with me since. The insusceptible, not able to be easily influenced. I think most people are easily influenced in this world that we're living in. A lot of people don't know why they're attached to certain things, sexually drawn to certain things, as I said before, attached to certain brands of alcohol, attached to certain belief systems, certain religions, certain ways of looking at the world, certain clothing. And then you look at, we all have done it before and laughed at the hairstyles, the wacky hairstyles in the 1980s and all the crazy drugs they were doing, the prope dope and that pure cocaine that was coming through, and Styx and Boston and Journey and those crazy, crazy old Metallica days. Anybody remember those days? You look at how much society changes, media changes, music changes, life has changed. And we're constantly going around in our lives thinking, you know, we have it all figured out. This is reality. Only this moment's real. There is no past. There is no future. And there's some spirituality in being in the moment, but that's not what I'm talking about. It's the abyss of only being concerned or consumed or emulating what you're seeing in this immediate reality. Instant, immediate, conformity. And when you look at all these different things, these changes in society, these changes that were taking place rapidly in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, you go down the whole list, the whole gamut, men and women, the types of jobs, the standard of living, the quality of the air, the quality of the food, the affordability of a place to live for that matter. How people felt about their country, the status of the U.S. military, the status of the U.S. as a superpower, the value of the U.S. dollar. All these things are rapidly changing, yet people are only looking at it for the last 24 hours and watching the Dow go up and down, as I watch their moods go up and down, never going, wait a minute, how do I get to a larger viewpoint, a larger perspective, to see all these things that have happened in the past, all these other banking dynasties that are still here to this day to a certain degree, that have just developed more power over time, banks that have funded both sides of a conflict, banks that have engineered oppressions. Why don't we look at those things? Why are we so consumed in the moment? But they don't want you stepping back from the TV set. They don't want you stepping back from Clear Channel or the radio station. They want everything going digital. And they want to make sure you have the new box in your house so that you can receive the new digital transmission. A whole new wave of media consolidation is also taking place as I speak. The future is uncertain. Your intent and who you are, where you're going in life, that can be a little bit more focused. There's their story and what they're crafting for us, and there's where you go from here on out. Knowing that you have no one else to look towards for information but yourself deep down inside. If the grid goes out, you had no access to information, and you had to make a decision as to whether to run or stay where you are. You'd have to detach from the matrix, from the panic going on, and look inside your heart. And in the end, that's the place where the answers will be found. It might be the only place where the answers will be found. When we come back from this phone call, I will talk about Iran's warning to the U.S. forces after Obama win, and we'll also talk about Russia moving more missiles to the Baltic. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, hi. I just thought I would make this, just put this out there for some people. It didn't seem very normal to me. I was driving home on the freeway on the 84 going west, and it was raining. It was dark and, you know, kind of cloudy and misty, so I couldn't really see the plate on the vehicle. But there was a private car that had been pulled over, and then there was a blue Chevy, like a Silverado, a truck, a newer one that had it pulled over. And the truck on the back, you know, there's the window, and then there was a red light and a blue light flashing on the back of it. And as I was driving away from it, I looked back in my mirror, and it had the typical, you know, police flashing lights in the grill, but it wasn't marked, and it didn't have any writing on it. And
you're right.
I believe that the plate was a private plate too. And usually, you know, these vehicles have, you know, the publicly owned plates on them. So I just thought that was kind of kind of scary, because even when they're unmarked, they usually are black, and they're, you know, a Suburban or something, and they'll have the publicly owned plate. So I just thought I would put that out there. I'd never seen anything like that before, and I thought it was really strange that a truck, you know, with blue and red flashing lights with a seemingly public or private plate was pulling somebody over. So I just thought I'd let people know.
There's a lot of that going on. Well, thank you for your tip. I appreciate that. And there was also an eyewitness who saw some tanks going down I-5 a couple weeks ago in Washington State. And there's more reports about certain aircraft over Portland, and we've talked about the black helicopters. It's here. A lot of things are here now. They'll have aerial, unmanned, you know, vehicles, cameras, I should say, up in the sky, automatic surveillance, tracking and tracing as much information as they can in these super database computers. And it's been happening for some time. They just release this information slowly out to the public, and we get used to it, and we say, well, you know, Obama can't go after all these things. He has to go along to get along. We just kind of have to accept and hope that he's got some special plan in mind for the elite, that he's just been acting the whole time. This is what some people believe. It's not what I believe. The reality is we're pretty much in a bad situation right now. And I want to continue with the news and remind you that there are some interesting moves being made, interesting weapons being developed, a lot of different forms of evil technology being pointed in the direction of the United States. Well, for one thing, Iran warns U.S. forces after Obama win, saying that it would respond to any violation of Iranian airspace. A message analysts said seemed directed at the new president-elect more than neighboring American troops. Now Russia to move missiles to Baltic is the next headline. In his first State of the Nation address, the president of Russia said short-range missiles in the region would neutralize the planned U.S. anti-missile shield in Poland and the Czech Republic. He did not say whether the short-range missiles would carry nuclear warheads. The U.S. says its shield is a defense against missiles from rogue states, but Moscow sees it as a direct threat. The president of Russia said he wanted to extend the presidential term there to 6 years from the current 4. He did not explain if he wanted to extend his own term or change the rules for his successor. He also said that Russia would jam the U.S. anti-missile system electronically. That's a very interesting statement. We will jam the U.S. anti-missile system electronically. He said that the era of American dominance after the collapse of the Soviet Union was over, saying, quote, "The world cannot be ruled from one capital. Those who do not want to understand this will only create new problems for themselves and others." In the next headline, Venezuela is buying Chinese jets. There's also a $1 billion military deal that's been made with Russia. In addition, Venezuela has also launched a satellite in China. A lot of cooperation taking place between Venezuela and China. And with that, we will go to the next phone call. Good evening.
Hello. You there?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, that fella that just called in that was kind of wondering about the blue Suburban, he shouldn't be too surprised because for almost 20 years now I first realized, but way back then, that when I visualized a county sheriff's deputy driving through the parking lot of a bar with a kind of like an olive drab set of coveralls on with a shoulder patch that wouldn't show up, but he was going after some kids that were vandalizing a phone booth. And so the unmarked cars have been around for a long time, and these things, they may be completely plain clothes, and it looked like just your average little driver that somebody drives back and forth to work in, and might be one guy or two guys in there, or it might be females too, who knows. But the police have long had, from my experience anyway, have long had,
This is nothing new. This is nothing new. They've been doing this for some time. They've been pulling over with, just cars that look like regular cars. Before you know it, you have lights going on behind you. This was before 9/11. It's not a new thing, but there may be some federal vehicles that are here that are unmarked that may not have been here before. And there is an increase in some of that surveillance and Homeland Security Suburbans going through the streets of downtown Portland, going through the streets of southeast Portland. So there is an increase, but you're right in the respect that some of the stuff has already been going on.
Well, these cars I'm talking about, they wouldn't have lights on them or in the grill or anything like that where they'd be able to pull you over. These are strictly cars that they just do their surveillance with, and they're viewing what's going on and report back to the black and white cars.
I understand.
So anyway, so that guy that called in, he shouldn't be too surprised because this has been going on now for close to 20 years as far as I know.
Yeah.
Take care. Keep up the good work, man. Thanks.
People shouldn't get overly saturated in fear. A lot of people ask me if I'm being watched, or they'll say, "You are definitely being watched," or they'll make different comments like that. And, you kind of smile at them and look at them in the face and kind of go like, what kind of reaction are you looking for? I mean, I've been doing this for some time. I put my birth name on it. We're not talking about classified information. This is information that's readily accessible to all of you. All you have to do is have the interest in taking a look at what a lot of people around the world already know about what the U.S. is doing and what's happening with our domestic police state and the DNA databases and the animal, human embryos that they're experimenting with, scientific laboratories, animal-human testing, stem cell research, the satellites in space, the stuff they can track you with, tell you what kind of cigarettes you've been smoking. All this stuff is declassified information. They show you movies like Enemy of the State, predictive programming. First you see it in a movie. Lots of different movies about the surveillance society. A lot of people talking about it way before 9/11. And then the right events happened for them to add a whole bunch more cameras saying this is the enemy, this is why we have to track you, this is why we want to DVR the whole globe. That was another report we talked to you about. A supercomputer, think about it, up in space, the ultimate server, filming the planet, different parts of it, and being able to rewind and go back in time because they have so much space they can just constantly have it run. You talk about that stuff that's out there. This is information that most people aren't looking at. And so with that, you have to understand that there's a certain beauty in being a small fish in a big pond. You go sometimes under the radar. You're not making, too much of a... To put it this way, if there were thousands and thousands of people behind me in Portland and we were affecting real change, then it would be a threat. Because I'm not doing that, because I don't have that kind of support, because the show hasn't gotten as big as it could be, that type of surveillance I don't believe is there. And for other people that have really big shows that are out there, they may be going through some sort of surveillance, whatever, but for the most part, there's nothing for even them to hide. So there's nothing to fear. If it's going to come one day and they'll have drop guns here in the U.S., perhaps foreign mercenaries going after people that are already on some list, it's going to happen. But if you want to go through life constantly being afraid of something that hasn't happened yet, that's your business. I think things in this world happen for a reason. Some people don't get killed for a reason. And even in another respect, there's a reason why bad things happen to good people. Some things end up happening to people that change them for the better. So when you're looking at the future and this whole spectrum of possibility, you got to put out there what you want to happen to you. The positive changes that you want to see happen in your own life. There's so much to get worried about, and this show has been misunderstood by most of the viewers based on my presentation at times, based on the overabundance of news and enough real talk about, asking about what it means to be a human being and what reality are we in right now? What predicament is our species in right now? How do we get to a more grounding place to where we want to bring kids into this world, to where we're happy to wake up each and every day? It's good to be in that place now with an uncertain future. But it's important that you know the name of the game and that the odds are against you politically and that you're going to have to make some decisions in the near future, some changes in your lifestyle, some changes in the way that you relate to other people. And so don't stone the messenger if you live in a glass house. That's my advice to you, and it's something I have to remind people of every now and then, and it's something that I try not to do to others at the same time. Because in the end, all we have, it's each other. That's why they want people so divided. So, when things do shift, not the end of the world, but things shift and there's a meltdown, they plan on people getting so upset, so angry, that the real chaos that people are going through is just people hurting each other. They're just going to be stepping back and continuing their agenda, continuing what they're doing, and sending police to certain areas where they have to, defend the infrastructure, defend the banks, defend City Hall. But they'll be sitting back watching their sick work and smiling gleefully. And that's what I'm worried about. Now, this next report, and then we'll finish up the show here, came to us from CNN.com. Lou Dobbs recently ran a certain report. Here's the headline: U.S. is funding Iranian nuclear program. As CNN reports, the U.S. State Department has given millions of dollars to two Russian institutions, which in turn are aimed directly to helping ramp up Iran's nuclear capability. This is also especially ironic given that the U.S. has accused Iran of producing fuel for nuclear weapons. So this is in the news right now. China backs Iran SCO membership. Chinese Prime Minister Wen Jiabao said his country sees no obstacle to Iran's membership in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The organization comprises China, Russia, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and a couple other countries, Kyrgyzstan, also with Mongolia, India, Iran, and Pakistan holding observer status. In the next report, as I said earlier, 2 more U.S. military units assigned for Homeland Security. Northcom has announced that 2 more U.S. military units will be assigned for domestic Homeland Security missions, bringing the total number of combat-ready service members operating inside the U.S. to around 4,700 as fears grow about the increasing militarization of law enforcement in the U.S. The announcement follows the controversy surrounding a September 8th Army Times report, which revealed that the U.S. Infantry Division's 1st Brigade Combat Team, fresh from combat duties in Iraq, would be operating inside America for tasks including civil unrest and crowd control. The ACLU has filed a Freedom of Information request demanding more information on the purpose and scope of military assets under Northcom control being deployed domestically. Despite Northcom's insistence that the deployments are purely related to national disaster and mass casualty response, the original Army Times report quoted 1st BCT commander as saying that the unit would be trained in the use of non-lethal weapons, electromagnetic weapons, mind you, designed to subdue unruly or dangerous individuals for the purposes of crowd and traffic control. In the last headline, the GM genocide. Thousands of Indian farmers are committing suicide after using genetically modified crops. This comes to us from globalresearch.ca, written by Andrew Malone. When Prince Charles claimed thousands of Indian farmers were killing themselves after using GM crops, he was branded a scaremonger. In fact, as this chilling dispatch reveals, it's even worse than even he feared. For official figures from the Indian Ministry of Agriculture do indeed confirm that in a huge humanitarian crisis, more than 1,000 farmers kill themselves in India each month. Simple, rural people are dying slow, agonizing deaths. Most swallow insecticide, a pricey substance they were promised they would not need when they were coerced into growing expensive GM crops. It seems that many are massively in debt to local money lenders, having overborrowed to purchase GM seed. Death seeds, things of that nature, all these things they're stuck with, being dependent on Monsanto, these things are happening right now. The Doomsday Seed Vault near Norway is open, ready for business, and they're bringing all these seeds in for whatever crisis they're expecting in the future. So in conclusion, that's a lot of information that we talked about tonight. There's a lot of information that we talk about this week. You know, it's a simple message. The world's changing quickly. You're going to have to look towards yourself for answers. You're going to have to look towards yourself to get yourself out of the mess that we're in. And we're going to have to do that collectively. And as cliche as it sounds, I find that it's talking about things like this that put people in a strange space mentally. They're having a hard time dealing with reality that we're actually going to have to let our guard down to a certain degree when it comes to relating to people here in the city, because there's really not going to be anybody else there but people around us to get us through the crisis ahead. So that's what I want you to be aware of as we move further and further into 2008 and 2009 and all the other things that we're going to face. Until next week, I'm Alex Ansary, reminding you that the path to the ultimate truth still starts in one place only, not the TV or radio or print. It's within. Have a good night. I'll see you next week.
Go back to bed, America. Your government is in control again. Here, watch this. Shut up. You are free to do as we tell you. You are free to do as we tell you.
Here's boy bands, here's Matters, here's Britney, here's Cola, here's pizza, here's TV, here's some rock, and some roller. Watch commercials, more commercials, watch Jerry, not Oprah. Buy a better life, from the comfort of your sofa. Here's popcorn, here's magazines, here's milkshake, here's blue jeans.